Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 264 of the RRBG podcast. This podcast is a proud member of the Podbelly Network. Go to podbelly.com and check out all the amazing shows we have on our network, including the Sofa King podcast, Robots for Eyes, Art and Jacob Do America. I mean, there's one for everything that you're into. If you're into Magic the Gathering, they got you. If you're into the occult, they got you. You're into serial killers, they got you. Everything. Go to podbelly.com, check out the list, and support the network. This episode is also brought to you by Killcliff. My friends over at Killcliff make the best energy drink you can buy in the market today. Clean energy, none of that crap that they put in Monster or any of those Red Bulls. No sugar, just clean power for all the grind you're going to have to put in today. And if you're not grinding today and you just want to relax, they also have CBD drinks to help you recover from any injuries you may have, any kind of inflammation. Maybe you went a little too hard at the gym. CBD drink will get you right back on track. Go to their website, killcliff.com. Check out all their different flavors. My personal favorite Ignite drink is the Cherry Limeade. And in the CBD category, you have to try the Joe Rogan Special. It's the Flaming Joe Pineapple with Jalapeno. It's not that spicy. You just get a little bit of a kick at the end. It's delicious. Go to killcliff.com and tell them that RRBG sent you. This episode is also brought to you by our good friends at Saints Joints. Go to saintsjoints.com to check out all the options that they have. They have these amazing packages with pre-roll joints, which will have pre-rolls from either side of the strain spectrum, either indica or sativa, and they even have multi-strain collections. Pick up one of their amazing Book of Saints. They currently have 2 volumes, volume 2 being a special Halloween edition. It looks like the Necronomicon. It's amazing. They're currently available in Washington and Oregon and will soon be available in California. Go to saintsjoints.com and tell them that RRBG sent you. This episode is also brought to you by our friends at Thunderking Coffee. Thunderking provides organic, air-roasted coffee straight out of Costa Mesa, California. It's seriously some of the best coffee I've ever had. My personal favorite is the Positive Morning Attitude. I order 2 pounds of this almost every 2 weeks because I just can't get enough. But they also have bottled cold brew. They have their special California Christmas peppermint cold brew out right now. You can order it from their website. So go to thunderkingcoffee.com and check it out. Support small, independent businesses, people. In this episode, I talked to the legendary Brandon Boyd of Incubus. It was a short conversation, only about 30 minutes. He's in the middle of his press cycle, so I caught him where I could get him. But he agreed to come back on and do a long, deep dive on psychedelics and mental health, we talked about that very briefly. We talked about his new solo album, Echoes and Cocoons, which comes out March 11th. We talked about what he did during the pandemic. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoy it. Make sure to follow him on social media. Go to @BrandonBoyd on all the things. Check out his art at his website, brandonboyd.me. Please click the little subscribe button down there and help us out. We need all the exposure on the algorithm that we can get. And if you get a chance, check out our Patreon page. Go to patreon.com/RRBG and get yourself some exclusive content and support the podcast. Cheers.
RRBG podcast of the Podbelly Network. And now your host, Eddie Torres.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to the RRBG podcast. Today I'm joined by the legendary Brandon Boyd. How are you, brother?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Question number 1. When did you discover that you aren't aging?
When did I discover that I am aging or I'm
that
not
you're
aging?
not aging.
I beg to differ. It's been a very interesting process to be smack dab in the middle of my 40s. And, you know, as some of your listeners are probably similar age to me, I'm not sure how old you are, but some are younger. But I will tell you, to the younger ones, right when you get used to how things are going and you're like, oh, I can do this in the 30s. Bam. Yeah. Changes. Like, where did that wrinkle come from? Where did this ache come from? It's definitely humbling.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sure.
It's very similar to, like, it happens to cars too. When you hit 100,000 miles, things start popping up.
Exactly.
Yeah. I turned 40 in November of last year. And now I have crippling knee pain. Like, oh, cool. Thanks. Happy birthday.
The good thing I will say about, I call them the minor aches, because it's like you can kind of push through most of the aches and the pains that come up. But the good thing about them is that they are, they're like little canaries in the coal mine. They'll tell you things that are important to know that you weren't necessarily looking for. And they give you a kind of window into, maybe I should focus on my knees, go to the acupuncturist or stretch or these things. So I think it helps to be proactive like that. Absolutely.
So I want to let's get some of the business out of the way right away. You have a new solo album coming out. It's called Echoes and Cocoons. And you recently just dropped a new song, Diamond My Dryer. So tell me a little bit about it. What's the theme behind? Obviously, Echoes and Cocoons makes me think a lot about evolution and kind of breaking out, and so tell me a little bit about it. What's the theme?
There's definitely there are themes in and around the album. Probably the most obvious ones being born of the experience of lockdown, which was a highly novel experience, I think, for all of us. First time in our lives when we were told, recommended, and or instructed to stay inside, unless you're going to put gas in your car or go to the supermarket. But here in California, it would have been, now in retrospect, it would have been like the perfect thing to do, to go for a swim in the ocean or go surfing. In my case, I grew up surfing, and something that I've, it's been a part of my life since I was like 10 years old. It was punishable by confiscation of your surfboard, arrest, and $1,000 fine if you paddled out into the water in Los Angeles. So I have a group of friends who would they would have their wetsuit on, have their board in hand, and they'd be like peeking around a corner, and there'd be cops on the beach at the local breaks. And when one person would paddle out, the cops on the bullhorn would tell them to come in. Someone would get a wave, come in, they'd arrest the guy. And as they take him away, my buddies, who are apparently a little more savvy, would rush out after the cops left and get to surf for like 40 minutes before they came back, and then they'd run again. So some of my buddies had like some of the best sessions of their lives during the pandemic because there's nobody else out. But anyway,
it's very punk rock too.
It is. These are the dudes that I grew up with. We call each other thrashers.
Thrashers. Okay.
Yeah. But Echoes and Cocoons. So they're, stuck at home. And so much happening in the world, in our society, in our culture, in our shared experience as human beings. It's like it was tailor made for artists to make stuff and speak to what is happening. I think Henry Rollins said something at one point like, "This is the moment all us punk rockers have been training for to get to work." I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember the exact quote, but it said something to that effect. So, I was desperate to make music, and I started recording covers, and I was writing some original stuff and just doing what I do here at home, just a little more aggressively because I was, stuck at home. And I ended up reaching out to this guy, John Congleton, through direct message on Instagram. And I hadn't worked with him before. In fact, we hadn't met before, but I just did kind of a cold call to him. And long story short, we started writing songs together. And all of the stuff that was coming up with me, like lyrically, it wasn't necessarily intentionally pointed at the direct experience that I was having. And what's wonderful about writing music is that it's like an upwelling from our subconscious. And then I feel like it's our job as artists to make space for that, and then essentially try and grab little moments of it and interpret it. We turn it into paintings or songs or movies, whatever. Speaking to the title of the album, the vibe, I suppose, is we were all collectively in our little echo chambers, and all of our voices, we were like broadcasting, and we are like broadcasting out to the best of our ability into the world, but they don't really make it past our filter bubbles. So we're hearing these echoes of our own sentiments, and they're echoed back at us, and then find ourselves in these, like ultra righteous rants, but they're not making it past our own very small. It's like, I think we're preaching to the choir, as it were. But then the cocoon part of it offers the hope, I suppose, the potential that in the cocoon or in that chrysalis, there is the potential to be born again into something better and more beautiful, after the caterpillar exits the chrysalis and it becomes a butterfly. So it's like there's the dark part of it, which is the echo in the cave, and then there's the cocoon, which can also become something bigger than it once was.
Interesting. Yeah. It's funny. I use the term cocooning often when things go a little awry. I end up, just getting the covers and just kind of cocooning in for a while. And that happened a lot during the pandemic because, I wanted to ask you, like, how are you doing mentally during this time? And it's exciting to see that you used it as motivation to create, because a lot of creators that I know I spoke to were having a really tough time just even caring about writing music, because like, what am I writing for if I can't go on the road? Like, that kind of thing. So how was your mental health? I mean, I know that you're very spiritual. You meditate, and I met you actually at Alex Jones seminar in Miami a long time ago. So I know where you go. I know where your mind goes.
Alex Jones?
No, not Alex Jones. Sorry.
Wrong Alex. One of those two.
Wrong Alex, I swear. No, Alex Gray. Sorry, my bad.
Alex Gray, yeah. I remember meeting you as well. It was a seminar on psychedelics and artistry. Yeah, that was an interesting panel for sure. It was funny, that panel, because everyone, I remember it would go along the table in the conversation with the different speakers, and everybody was singing the praises of psychedelics, as I do as well most of the time. But I always caveat my praises and my hope for psychedelics with a nice dash of like caution. I don't know if you remember me chiming in during the conversation being like, this is all awesome. All of this is awesome. But, these things, these entheogens, whatever you want to call them, are not to be trifled with. Some of them more so than others. So be definitely, buyer beware. Anyway, speaking on my general mental health through this period of time, what's wild is that we're talking about it as if it is in the past.
Right. We're still going.
It's still kind of amongst us. Yeah. It was, for me personally, I weathered it fine. It was definitely challenging on some relationships in my life. In fact, like my most direct relationship with my former partner, her and I had been, what's wild is that we've been seeing each other for a little over 4 years now. So roughly half of our relationship has been amongst a global pandemic.
Wow.
And we've been talking about it recently, but there was a period of time after, I think, 6 or 8 months of lockdown, where it went from being kind of like blissfully locked down together, where we were like cooking and hanging out together, getting to know each other much more intimately. And it was wonderful. And then it just like, there was a moment where we were probably going to kill each other and we had to separate. And it's unfortunate because we separated for a short period of time amongst a pandemic. So then there was this period of aloneness, I should say. So, and a lot of songs came about during that period of time. So the album definitely has its share of darkness as well as lightness. But we ended up getting back together, and we, we were able to continue to lean in to each other, in our relationship to help each other through this very strange period of time. But it definitely gave me pause, and it definitely ratcheted up my empathetic response to so many people around the world who did not fare so well during this period of time.
Yeah.
We're a communal species. We're just great apes, who we have this awesome opposable thumb trick that we do, and an enlarged prefrontal cortex that makes us problem solve a little bit better, but also able to anticipate danger. So our anxiety is a thing. And I think that if there's a silver lining amongst the mental health part of the epidemic or the pandemic, it's that it became much more of a normal conversation to have with friends and loved ones. Like, how are you? How are you doing? And not without, I think it broadened our general concern for our loved ones, and our friends, which is really important.
Yeah. Especially, it's easy to say this, but it felt like we were kind of rushing through life at this point. We were trying to get past everything that had happened with the previous administration, which I'm not going to get into, but everybody felt like they were just rushing into like I need to get out and do stuff. And all of a sudden it was like a stop. And like you said, it's very good that everyone's been able to reconnect. I mean, I found myself I already am one of those guys that texts everyone all the time. Like, hey, how are you? You good? Hit me up if you need anything. And
that's great.
Yeah. But it amped up actually after, when the lockdown happened. Let me check in with everyone, make sure everyone's okay. Cause it is crazy. And even myself, I've always found myself to be very strong mentally. And, I like with the Alex Gray thing, like I actually fell really deep into trying to discover the nature of existence and all of that. And I thought I had it locked down. I'm like, I'm good. Like, I know what's good. And then, during the middle of the pandemic, that's when I was like, oh, wait, no, I don't know anything. Who knows?
Which actually, but I have to say, though, that revelation, really the kind of discovering the boundaries of your experience, I suppose, ultimately, I think is a really good thing, because I think it's a good thing as human beings to be humbled, to be reminded that we are essentially on borrowed time. We're here. The fact that we breathe and we can walk around with minor aches and pains, the fact that we have relatively robust immune systems, the fact that we have the capacity to observe ourselves and observe each other. These are all miraculous things, and they're in a sort of evolutionary sense on a cosmological scale are new. We're super egoic about it too. We're like, look at us fucking go, man. Like we have look at our technologies, look at our medicines. We're so fucking cool. And then all of a sudden there's like, are we? We were not as far along as we thought we were. And then all you got to do is take even a peripheral glance into the way that our inabilities to handle more than handle an opposing thought in mind at the same time, and you watch this kind of massive cultural rift happen. It started before the pandemic, but then the pandemic just put it on steroids. Oh. And that also made me double down. But wow, are we so awesome as we thought we were? Or are we have a lot to learn. And so I ultimately think that that's a good revelation. I think that is something that needed to be looked at. And we were doing everything in our power to just kind of double down on how awesome we were. It's like, yes, we are awesome. This is miraculous, but we got a fuckload of work to do.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially, thinking about that theme you mentioned, the echo chamber thing. I know that's a buzzword too. Everybody's using it these days on podcasts and whatnot, but it is true. And that further divides people, because you sit you're in your little chamber getting this positive response that you want, because everything is filtered through that algorithm. And then when one person, you meet someone and they counter your perspective, automatic, like the aggression is elevated at that point. That's why you see all these fights, and you know, it's nuts to me. I mean,
it is pretty crazy. And none of us are 100% immune to it. You know, the only people that have been like professionally meditating in like on the top of a hill somewhere where they don't really have to like encounter other human beings. There's a funny thing, funny saying about meditation. It's like, if you think you're enlightened, spend Christmas with your parents. You know what I mean? Like anybody can learn how to meditate in a cave up on a hill 100 miles from the nearest human being, but like a truly enlightened person will be able to meditate in the middle of Times Square.
Sure.
And that's when it, you know, the real test happens. So
how much time do you spend actually meditating on a daily or on a weekly basis?
I have been a little out of the habit recently, just in the past, I suppose, month or so. I rarely call it meditating, actually, even though that is what's happening. The term meditation is a much more sort of accurate descriptor, but the term that I use with like my girlfriend or my loved ones is, I'm going to go drop in. That's what I always say, because that's what it feels like, essentially. When you sit and you breathe and then you close your eyes and you have this experience of moving past all of the kind of chatter that exists on a day-to-day basis. You sort of drop through it, and beneath it, there's, I suppose the best way to describe it is it feels like it's sort of infinite and it's nothing. So you drop past the chatter and you drop into this beautiful, infinite nothingness. And it's this gorgeous experience because for a few minutes, or in my case, it's about 20 minutes a day, you are free of thought. And it has a really interesting side effect. It's not the reason that I necessarily do it, but it is a very fortuitous side effect, because having the experience of no thought for 15 to 20 minutes a day creates a breadth of space. It creates space in your body, literally, but it also creates space in you for creative potential. It's like that space doesn't just remain space. I feel like cleaner things are able to occupy that space. So in my description of cleaner things would be like creativity, songs, paintings, ideas, strategies on how to deal with an ever-changing landscape. You know, I feel like if there was ever a time to learn about meditation, it would be, this is like the perfect time. And I would recommend it to every single person alive. It's wild to hear too about, there's so many people who you wouldn't expect are quote meditators, but you know, a lot of like professional athletes, a lot of actors, people in powerful leadership positions. And from what I've been able to glean, they all kind of say the same thing. It's like, it just creates this interesting space where you aren't kind of amongst the avalanche of thoughts. It's like you're sort of you're hovering right above it, watching the avalanche. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Yeah. I mean, I used to call it the void, but the void is it can be taken negatively, you know, and you know, it's not a negative thing at all. It just felt that way. Like there's nothing here, you know? You know, there's two things that kind of my brain kind of branched out while you were saying that. And it was one being that when I speak to people, and I speak to a lot of athletes as well, and the way that I try to describe it to them is that, you know, when you go to the gym and you're doing like, let's say bicep curls all day, you know, after a while, your muscle gets tense and tight and hurts, and you got to stop and you got to go sleep. You got to go rest. And then when you sleep, your muscles, you know, heal, and then it grows and your muscle gets stronger. That's how the body works. And the same goes for your mind. And if you don't, you're doing bicep curls with your brain all day, every day, your whole life. If you've never meditated, it's like you've never stopped working out, and your brain is cramped, and you gotta meditate and rest to let it grow. You know, That's how I describe that. But I also, the other direction my brain went was that when I was really heavily into meditating daily, experimenting with psychedelics and discovering Alex Gray and all that. Not Alex Jones. My goodness, I can't believe I said Alex Jones.
It's kind of awesome. Like, have I been to an Alex Jones seminar?
No,
oh my God.
I hope not. But anyway, I felt that fear of like the Icarus effect, where I would go too far and burn myself and kind of get lost in my own mind. Have you ever come close to that? Have you ever had to pull back, like consciously, like, you know what, let's take a break?
I think the answer to your question ultimately is yes, but it wasn't because I felt my sort of waxen wings starting to melt because of my proximity to the sun. It wasn't quite as specific as that. It was more, I've always had a very clear barometer for when I've reached sort of my boundary, whether it's psychologically or I've never been the person that eats to the point where I am sickeningly full. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I have this weird, my dad's the same way. It's really interesting. Like I eat really slowly. It kind of frustrates some people. And then I will stop eating before I'm actually full. I've always done that. And so I suppose that it's an accurate kind of analogy to the way that I've approached some of these sort of psychospiritual boundaries. And then, so there's that, but then there are experiences with psychedelics where you are, you careen past your boundary, like you go and you only realize that you're miles away from your boundary and deeply out of your comfort zone once you're there and you're like, oh shit, like I am in the woods right now. And those are the moments that I've learned that I have a relatively robust psychology, relatively speaking, because those have been some of the most rewarding spiritual experiences for me, because through understanding how far past the boundary you are, you're almost forced into a kind of spiritual surrender. And that was essentially my experience with ayahuasca.
Yes.
The ayahuasca, for anyone out there, I'm sure everyone's heard the term before, but ayahuasca makes LSD and or mushrooms look like you took an aspirin. You know what I mean? Like it's like it is wildly intense and but stunningly beautiful. But it's so intense that there's nothing to do but surrender. And if you try and fight it, that's when you incur ayahuasca's wrath. That's the term that I've heard before. The bad trip. But then even the people that were around me, because it was in a group of people when I had my ayahuasca experience, even the people that were fighting it and having the more kind of wrathful experience, as the sun started to come up and all of us were coming out of the experience, even those people were transformed. They were, in tears and thanking God for the experience. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's, I've come up against some of those boundaries before with more common psychedelics like psilocybin, and what I have learned to do when I feel that level of presence and it becomes almost overwhelming, I almost like, it's hard to describe. I think the closest thing I could describe it as is almost like there's like a prostration, like you kind of almost like bow your head and you acknowledge that something infinitely more powerful than your ego is in your presence. And if you try and you try and stand up to it and like muscle it, you're just going to get slapped. You know what I mean? Yeah. And you're going to move into that kind of quote bad trip area, and you'll be the one like staring in the mirror, smearing lipstick all over your face, asking, "Where's Brandon?"
That sounds oddly specific. And I'm just
Anyway,
yeah.
you know what I'm talking
Well, unfortunately, we are running out of time. I know you're time constrained. I mean, I feel like these 30 minutes flew by, and I want
Yes, they did.
I would love to sit down for a longer, when you're not in the press cycle, would love to sit down with you and really dig deep.
Let's do it. Yeah, I'd be happy to.
Awesome. Last question was, have you painted during the pandemic at all?
Yeah, quite a lot.
Yeah,
quite a lot. I've been just between making music and painting and making music again and painting and printmaking. And I have this thing that I started during the pandemic, which we're going to do our first print release probably by the end of this month. But it's a thing called Moonlight Arts Collective. And some collaborators and I, so there are three of us. One is my art manager, Jen DeSisto, and then one is an old friend of mine who is a kind of titan in the fine art print world. His name is Pietro Truba. The three of us started this thing called Moonlight Arts Collective, and we're bringing the kind of infrastructure that I've created around my art pursuits to other multidisciplinary, I guess you could say, multidisciplinary artists. So people that we know and love from music or television or film or sports who also paint. So we'll be doing print releases with people like Mark Mothersbaugh from Devo, or
Nice.
Norman Reedus is a fantastic photographer.
Very cool.
John from Portugal the Man is a fantastic illustrator. It's like there are people who have a similar approach to creativity,
Awesome.
who are like, they do one thing and we kind of know it for, but they also, like, when they get home, they moonlight as a painter. So that's the whole idea.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, for everybody that's listening and watching, please make sure to follow Brandon. Go at Brandon Boyd on all of the things. The new album, Echoes and Cocoons, comes out March 11th. You can also check out all your art on brandonboyd.me. Anything else that you'd like to plug or talk about before we leave?
I don't think so. But thank you. I appreciate your time, man.
Thank you so much, man. I've been a fan for a very long time. I mean, since 15 years ago, I think, or maybe longer, when I saw you with the Deftones and Trapped in Florida, like years and years and years. And you definitely influenced my vocal approach to singing when I joined the band and everything. So it's a real honor to have you on, man. And hopefully we can reconnect and, like I said, do a real deep dive.
Yeah, I'd love to. Thanks so much.
All right. Have a good one. Take care.
Okay. You too.
Cheers.
Bye.